Ben, how's it going today?
I love you, Billy. Good to be with you as always, my friend.
I know, it's great to see you. And I always love getting to talk with you because you have so much insight and you deal with issues of, depression and all the things that are sort of going on in our culture right now. And after this crazy year and a half, right, I think there's so many people who are dealing with so many different things. And you've got a book out. It's called Flirting with Darkness, Building Hope in the Face of Depression. So let's actually start with your journey and then we'll get into the book. You grew up in a faithful family. You are somebody who is out there speaking. You're actually one of the most joy-filled people, which is what I love about you just as a friend and getting to interact with you. And you're so encouraging, but you've gone through your own journey of struggle in this area. So take us through that. When did you start experiencing struggles in your life with depression and related issues? Just take us through that beginning journey.
When I was 18 to 28 years old, that was really when the clinical chronic suicide ideation, depression, it was just an onslaught. So for 10 years, I dealt with that. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with Albert Camus. You probably are, but Camus, he would like purposely be a passenger in a reckless driver's vehicle to be a passive victim. So when he died of a car crash, it's speculated that it was actually suicide because he was an absurdist philosopher and metaphysician. And I did things like that. Like I tried to kind of be a passive victim. I would, take my friend's motorcycle, even though I didn't know how to ride it and I didn't have a license, and I would just go at excessively fast speeds without a helmet, or walk on the edge of our tallest building in our city. Another time I even scared a security guard because I was like on the top of this building, and you know what I mean? Like I would just flirt with death. I would flirt with suicide.
Was that intentional? Like, was it subconscious, or was it something that you realized, you were doing and you didn't really care what the result was?
Yeah, it was both. It was automatic and subliminal. And part of it was I just wanted to face fear and not be feel like nothing could touch me, because I was so torn up and in turmoil inside that almost doing dangerous things and flirting with death and hey, if I die, I die. It almost gave me a sort of peace. And then I started going through that like a dark peace. I went through this again though. So I got healed. I was great for a couple of years. That's when I wrote Off to Misfits, and I'm with my friends and I'm skateboarding and, I'm finding joy again. And then my brother passed away. I went through some other traumas because my sister passed away when I was a kid. And then when my brother passed away as well, I just started to fall back in to this dark period of time, like a little over a year. And during that time, it was the worst depression yet. And that's kind of when I was writing some of Flirting with Darkness, because I just felt like I'm not going to survive this one. I would literally, in my imagination, I would see witches with their faces laughing at me, like their distorted cackles in my ear and their twisted visage in my sort of creative fancy. And I was just truly mentally ill. And you know what saved me, Billy, was one of my friends. His name's Chad Williams. You would love to do an interview with him, but he wrote a book called Seal of God. He was a Navy SEAL and SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 7, and he started training me over the past year and doing drown proofing and surf torture and just you in the pavement really started to help me conquer pain and realize that nothing can break you if you don't let it. And I know that sounds so simple, and it is very simple to say. It is very hard to actually get to that place. But honestly, that verse that Paul said, endure hardness as a good soldier of Jesus Christ, really helped me, because I think as a snowflake generation, we don't know how to handle adversity because we grew up in the lap of luxury. So when the fiery tribulation comes, the snowflake generation melts under the heat. So I just feel like for me, that really helped me through it. And the book that I have coming out next in January, I talk a little bit about how that helped save me as well.
So it's interesting because obviously you had a couple of major events. Losing siblings is one of the most difficult things on earth. You've been a person of faith. When did you become a Christian? When would you say you personally accepted your faith?
Well, I asked Jesus into my heart at 2 years old.
So you were young. And I bring that up to say that you were a person of faith. I think there's this misconception when it comes to the struggles that people have that, faith is just because you're a Christian, you're not going to have these struggles. And that's just not true. You are somebody who grew up in faith. a family of faith you came from, and you had these struggles. How did you process both the first 10-year period of time and that second 1-year period of time? How did you process those struggles in light of your faith? Did you feel like, I shouldn't have these struggles, I'm a Christian? Like, take us through some of that, because I know people, they struggle with that.
Yeah, well, that's where the Bible is so endearing to me personally, because history is written by victors. So when it says that Alexander the Great never smelled bad, I just wonder, is that true? Like, he's going into battle. Did he really never smell bad? Because he conquers the world, so he gets to determine and dictate how the historians that he's linked with write his biography. The Bible's different. It's actually written by defeated foes who are calling out their own rulers and calling out their own kings and calling out the injustice in their empire, who are beaten by the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Medes, the Chaldees, the Moabites, the Roman Empire, like the Greeks. These are people who are like, we're hanging our harps on the willow tree because we're in captivity in Babylon. I mean, these were a defeated people, defeated foes, and defeated by their foes, I should say. And that's where I just really found solidarity, this sort of Me Too thing, where the writers of the Bible are saying, you know what, we're defeated. We've been through darkness. And actually, the phrase "a broken heart" was invented by the Bible. So in 1000 BC, the phrase "a broken heart" was first used in literature, and it was in Psalms. Even extra biblical secular literature, the first time a phrase "a broken heart" was used is in the Bible. And so I just started finding like compassion in the Psalms and compassion in the scriptures and hope in the promises of God. There are over 3,500 promises in the Bible, and that eclipses all of our problems. So clinging to those promises helped me really wade through a lot of those problems.
And imperfect people. I mean, the thing about the Bible that I've always found so compelling is that if you were going to make up a holy book, right? And I do not believe the Bible is made up, but if you were going to make it up and try to get everyone to believe it, you would create perfect individuals and characters. You would create perfect stories. The Bible is so real, and that it presents many individuals who have made mistakes. Not all of them have redeemed themselves. Many of them have redeemed themselves. You look at Paul, you go down the line. I mean, from Old Testament to New, it's a remarkable holy book because we know that it's true and that it's real. And so you talk about the promises. I often think about the mistakes, and not because it's an excuse to make mistakes, but it's understanding that we're human beings and that God can do amazing things through our lives, right? And even through the bad mistakes we make, he can turn that into something beautiful. And so, in your story, as you were journeying through this, you talked about the suicidal thoughts. That 10 years is a long time to be going through that. What was the biggest breaking point for you during that time, or the biggest moments? And I'm sure this is a loaded question, but where you really felt like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to make it out of this?
Yeah, I went through a romantic heartbreak after an 8-year relationship that I felt blindsided, like I wasn't expecting it. And I think that was a moment where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to survive this one. Another moment was I was sick on airplanes, traveling, like literally getting sick. My immune system was starting to deplete because I was living on airplanes. And I remember like I would like be throwing up and then go speak at an event, and I was already depressed. And so like, I just started to feel like I don't know if I'm going to make it. But what helped me through there, I'd say these are two of some of the biggest things. Number one was prayer walks, like just talking to God. I might've told you this before, Billy, but secular research shows, or just, good research, I should say, shows that if you talk to God about your hopes, fears, and dreams, it has the same effect on your brain as therapy. And I found that the Lord is a wonderful counselor. I mean, I have a therapist now who really was instrumental and integral in saving my life. I don't know why people say counseling's bad, and the Bible says in the multitude of counselors there's safety. But I have a great counselor therapist now. But back in the day, I tried a counselor and it didn't really work. And you don't know if you're going to get Oedipus complex, Freudian daddy issues, Adlerian power grabs, like Frankel's logotherapy, Jungian dream analysis. Like, you don't know what kind of psychological literature they're going to throw at you. And I had already read this stuff. So sometimes you're like, man, I don't know what I'm going to get with a counselor. But here's the thing. When you go to God, who's a wonderful counselor, he always meets you. It says if you draw near to God, he draws near to you. He speaks to you. The Bible says if you lack wisdom, ask him and he'll give it to you. He's the best counselor ever. So that was one thing that was huge for me, is just talking to God about my hopes, fears, and dreams. And the second thing for me, and this is something my therapist told me, is pursue purpose and not happiness. Because if you try to get happiness, you're not going to find it. if you pursue purpose, then happiness will follow. And that's what I found. It's like those moments where you just can't find happiness, stop trying to look for it. Instead, pursue purpose, pursue meaning, like hone a craft, work your trade, ply your vocation. And what happens is joy ends up following if you prioritize purpose.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you've been an inspiration to so many people. And obviously this book that you have out, again, Flirting with Darkness. What made you want to write this book? Because you mentioned you were writing it during a difficult time as well, but what made you want to put this out?
The number one question I got asked from people is, how do I defeat depression? So, or how do I get my kid to overcome depression? Like, parents kept coming to me saying, help my kid overcome depression. What do I do? And I got asked that so frequently that I finally said, I need to write a book about it. And I had written a lot of the book when I was in a really great season. And then, you know how you get the manuscript back and then you add stuff. Like, I wrote kind of a letter to my brother after he passed away. When I got the manuscript back, like a little bit later, I added it on. All of that to say, like, a lot of it was written, I feel like, at a perfect time, because some of it was written during a time of victory. Some of it was written during a time of loss. And I think that sort of enabled me to, on one hand, have compassion and empathy for those experiencing loss, but on the other hand, not just to say, yeah, bro, life's tough, too bad, let's all sit in the mire together, or the slough of despond, but instead I could actually give people practical tools. So literally 11 chapters of this book are devoted to practical weapons that will help people defeat depression. And I this is my number one passion, Billy, is I want to help people overcome depression. I want to help people find hope, because I believe that you do not have to live with depression. I know it's trendy to say, oh, I'm my authentic self, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, that's just who I am. Instead, I would say you can defeat depression. The psalmist didn't say, why are you cast down, O my soul? Keep staying cast down. He said, why are you cast down, O my soul? Hope in God. And I believe hope in God is the antidote to anxiety and depression.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about finding freedom, right? Where do we find freedom? We find it in Christ. I think we look, and that doesn't mean we don't go other places. You mentioned a therapist, talking to people. God gives us a lot of different tools that we can use as gifts as well. But having that connection with him and looking for the joy, which I love that distinction between happiness and joy. Those are two very different things. And joy is something that we get from our relationship with Jesus, right? We get that from God, and we find that through doing what he's called us to do. And that's what you've been doing. So for you, I mean, you just sort of answered this, but when somebody finishes the book, when they get through it, what's the biggest takeaway for you? What's the most important thing you're hoping that they're experiencing and feeling?
Yeah. Okay. So the twofold. Number one, that they would not feel bad because they're depressed or guilty, like to remove the stigma and taboo, because Elijah, Moses, David, Job, Paul all experienced either suicide, ideation, depression. Jonah was suicidal, and Jesus said, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Moses said, if you continue to treat me this way, take my life. David was bipolar, if not borderline, dancing as an ephod one moment, the next minute saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jonah wanted to die when a worm ate his plant. Elijah wanted to die when Jezebel chased him in a chariot and he was under a juniper broom tree, exhausted from this battle at Mount Carmel against the 850 prophets of Baal and the groves, respectively. Paul said, we despaired even of life. Jesus said, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. If you experience these things, you should not feel bad. You're in the company of some greats. And 50% of the Psalms are laments, and these are godly people. On the other hand, the second thing I want them to take away is that we got to remove the stigma and taboo from depression, but depression is something that can be defeated. And this is something I really want to drive home to people, because not a lot of people are saying this today. And there's a lot of wonderful work being done in the area of Christian mental health. But where I kind of take a different stance of most people that I know is I genuinely believe that you can beat it. I'm not just saying like, oh, you can kind of push it to the side or learn to accept it. I really believe it can be beaten. And that's why I lay out these weapons to help people beat it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a fascinating and important topic. And you look at the statistics of where we are right now. And I want to ask you about that. And this is another tough question to answer, I think, in some ways, although some may have quick answers to it. So I'm interested to see what you say. But obviously, COVID aside, we were having a mental health crisis before COVID. We were having an opioid addiction crisis before COVID. We were seeing suicide numbers skyrocket before COVID. You add COVID into the mix, and there's still some data coming out on suicide, but we know opioid addiction is through the roof. And a lot of these issues are worsening. And I think there was a survey recently, only 6% of Americans are Bible-minded, and that's a whole other conversation. But why do you think society on the mental health front is experiencing what we are here in America in the way that we're experiencing it?
Part of it is digital addiction. 2,617 times per day, we pull out our phones. We pull out our phones once every 6 minutes, 150 times per day. And as Billy, I'm sure you know, I was just talking to Bobby, my friend, the other day. Oh, you need to know Bobby Schuler. You would love him too. But Billy, I think we've talked about this before, but like, you know how when you do this on your phone, you scroll, it's the same physiological mechanism as pulling a slot machine, and it activates the same chemical, dopamine, in your brain. So when you get text likes notifications, you don't know if it's a win or if it's a loss, if it's a good text or a bad text. So you have to go to your phone when you hear the Pavlovian dog, when it vibrates, you have to go to it and you scroll because you don't know, you refresh, is it a good comment, a bad one? Did I get more likes or not very many? So it's an addictive rush. It's the same chemical as gambling, that dopamine loop. So this digital addiction, sociologists tell us, and obviously we're constantly comparing ourselves with each other in a way that's just on steroids. That has contributed to our collective depression. So much so that, as you pointed out, COVID aside, like COVID depression rates have tripled since COVID. But even before that, once out of every 40 seconds, someone would commit suicide. USA Today a few years back said there were 123 suicides per day in the US. The depression rates are so intense that we in America consume more antidepressants than the rest of the earth combined by 3 times over. We live in a day where suicide was the second leading cause of death in my age group in 2017. So because of this, like, I believe this is the issue of our time. And this is why a hope message and an intelligent one, like I want to be a hope apologist, where I want to give like an intellectual argument and an emotionally passionate argument as to why there's an apology for hope, why hope is actually intellectually justified, vindicated, and reasonable. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because I want to show people you can beat this thing and you can do it in a smart, heartfelt way.
Yeah, and you look at just, culture, sort of this move away from God, and you see this in statistics when you look at Generation Z, when you look at millennials. And there was another survey: millennials are more likely to believe in horoscopes than they are in an all-knowing and all-loving God. And I thought, gosh, that is really unfortunate and a little scary, but there's a lot happening. And so when we talk about, and you and I were talking offline before this interview, and to be candid, like when we talk about how do we address that, you tell people about Jesus, you point people toward truth, right? And I think that is something that we need to be doing. And that's something you do so well. You also, for those who are watching and listening, you have a series that's Hope Generation, which people can watch on Pure Flix. They can see it other places as well. But that's another amazing way. Talk about that a little bit, just what you're trying to accomplish through that.
Yeah, through Hope Generation, I believe that the media, and this is what you do so well amongst other things, Billy, is using the media to present the message of God. And ultimately, Paul used the Roman roads, the Persian mailing system, the dictation of letters, the highest technology of his day. John the Baptist wouldn't. I mean, he was out in the wilderness. You had to go out to the desert to find him. And I always joke around, that's how my dad is. Like, he's out in the desert, and I'm infiltrating media stuff. And I feel like that's my heart with Hope Generation, is to actually utilize, employ, and deploy the media and social media to present a message of hope, because the 24/7 news cycle, as you know, it leads with bad news, because bad news sticks to the brain like Velcro and good news slips off the brain like water through a sieve. So you have to meditate on good news for 15 seconds in order for it to stick. So bad news is more sticky than good news. It takes more effort and meditation to actually assimilate and maintain good news in your brain. So I want to just infiltrate people with good news. Jesus said, I have come to heal the brokenhearted. I have come to preach good news to the poor. And so my heart is that we would, through Hope Generation, infiltrate the media with good news. And I want to tell anybody who's watching that if you are suicidal, if you're depressed, remember, you are forged by adversity. Do not judge the rest of your life on this current season. You are going to get through this. Suffering tempers your spirit into steel. It forges your soul into iron. So the center of everything is do not give up. That is the center of everything. Again, all pain is finite. So don't judge the rest of your life on this current season.
I was actually going to ask you what you would say to people, and I love that you said that, because that's so important. There may be people watching or listening right now who need to hear that. And where can people go to grab Flirting with Darkness? Is there a special website you want to send them to?
Yeah, you can just go to Amazon or anywhere books are sold. But if you type Flirting with Darkness into Amazon, that'll do the trick.
That'll do it. There you go. Well, listen, thank you so much, Ben. We got to have you back sometime soon again to talk more about this. Thank you for all you do and for tackling this important topic.
Love you, Billy. I'm so proud of your work in the world, and I follow you, and I just love your ministry and how you've just been used so mightily by God in this generation. And I think the best is yet to come for you, dude. I really love you.
Well, right back at you. I so appreciate it. Thank you.